Well, hello and good morning, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon or whatever time of the day it is for each of you. But welcome to day 2 of the University Global Coalition's annual meeting. I'm Angel Cabrera. I'm president of Georgia Tech and one of the co-founders of the University Global Coalition. And once again, I want to thank our attendees for taking the time to learn about the amazing work going on in higher education right now to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I want to also thank yesterday's speakers. I can't think of a just better way to set the context for our shared work. I want to thank also the many others who've contributed their time and talent to putting this event together, and that includes the steering committee, which helps shape our mission and goals, and the committee chair, Arturo Kondo, who's president, as you know, of Earth University, our partners at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, who have done so much to support the UGC as well as this gathering. There's Georgia Tech Professional Education. Thank you to my colleagues who've looked after our attendees and presenters on the technical end. Thanks to all the outstanding speakers and panelists, and thanks also to all the sponsors. In addition to Georgia Tech, our partners at McGill, at Earth University, Carnegie Mellon University in Africa, the State University of New York, George Mason University, Koç University in Turkey, UC Davis, and CODES, the Centro de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible para América Latina. So thanks to all of you. Now, the annual conference is our big annual milestone, but the UGC expands its activities as of this coming year. We've adopted the Geneva Trialogue event that brings together academia, international organizations, and the private sector, also in support of the SDGs. The 2022 Geneva Trialogue will become the UGC flagship event in Europe and globally, and will take place annually every March. So following the success of last year under the excellent organization of UNITAR and the University of Geneva, the 2022 event will continue exploring scaling open innovation for the SDGs. And so please mark your calendars for March 17th of 2022. UGC, as you know, provides an important organizational framework for an institutional commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals in higher education through partnership, teaching, research, and most importantly, by what universities do, which is develop future leaders. We see the UGC as a central convener for sharing best practice and for partnering with colleagues and students around the world to take action. And our focus today is on the most important part of a university, students. If you look closely at the schedule, you'll see the word student pops up all over the place. And our keynote speaker and plenary panel this morning are experts in working with young leaders. Our panel focuses on the Millennium Fellowship, the signature program of the Millennium Campus Network. The Millennium Campus Network brings together students to develop SDG-focused action plans for their campuses. It helps students implement those plans and connects students with others around the world who are taking on the same challenge. It's a big action and learning network. But before we hear from the Millennium Fellowship, we're going to get some very insightful comments and hear the expertise from our keynote speaker, Brighton Kaoma. Brighton is the global director of SDSN Youth, a program of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Brighton is a leader in youth empowerment, a journalist, and an international consultant on environmental issues. He started early. When he was 14, he in fact created a radio program from his home township of Kitwe in Zambia that drew more than 2 million listeners weekly and inspired thousands to take climate action. He knows what it means to be a young leader. He hasn't slowed down since then. Today, he holds a master's in public administration from Columbia University, and he advises high-level leaders around the world. He has received awards and fellowships from across the globe, and we are thrilled to have him here today to share his experience and wisdom. Welcome, Brighton.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Angel, for that very candid and incredible introduction. I'm very excited to be here today, and most importantly, to join a global coterie of other young leaders. I think there's no better time than now to engage in productive dialogue with like-minded young people, but most importantly, to explore pathways through which we can be able to design education systems that meets the needs of today's young people, but also that complement the needs of today's industry. We are currently remaining with a very few years before 2030, when we need to reflect back on our work towards Agenda 2030 of sustainable development, and the need to greatly expand society's capacity to solve complex challenges has never been more important or more urgent. And with just 9 years remaining to the 2030 deadline of achieving the SDGs, the growing understanding of the urgency of addressing climate change, for example, the COVID-19, and now the challenges of managing the pandemic and its fallout has become extremely important. This need is strongly recognized when we go back to SDG 4.7, which calls for ensuring that, and I quote, all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. But how do we make sure that we prepare the next generation of leaders by equipping them with the right knowledge and skills for them to become global citizens? And in my few minutes today, I'm going to speak about some of my thoughts. Number one, exploring the role that universities and higher learning institutions need to play in this discourse. But also, I'll challenge young people to think about ways through which they can continue becoming active citizens in their respective discipline and area of interest. As all of you might be aware, there is a need to both scale up existing activities, as well as implement and mainstream new types of transformative learning activities, which employ interdisciplinary, action-based learning and multi-actor involvement, and which usually goes beyond business as usual. For all of these reasons, I want to recommend that universities need to do at least 4 things. Number one, they need to create new organizational units. These might be departments, schools, faculties, institutes, or some other means of organizations to house many of the most university programs on sustainable development. There are so many examples that we can give. For example, Columbia University has established the Earth Institute, which combines science, engineering, and public policy, exemplifying this approach. And we need other universities to equally do the same, because by doing that, then we streamline and have a clear-cut approach to equipping the next generation of leaders with the needed skills on sustainable development. Secondly, I encourage universities to establish new educational programs, enabling students to train in sustainable development, and ideally at each level of their higher education. So this includes undergraduate, master's, PhD, and executive training. These education programs should train students to think systematically about the major challenges: poverty alleviation, access to public services, environmental sustainability. And this should be done from a number of disciplinary perspectives and with a solution orientation, such as practical problem solving. And I'll be able to expand on this shortly. And after these programs, and often these programs should include policy-related projects working directly with a client. This could include local government or a ministry at national level. Such practical capstone projects, for example, are a powerful way to mentor students into practical policy design based on rigorous science, engineering, and policy analytics. And I'm saying this from experience after having undergone some rigorous practical capstone-based policy advising to New York City Department of Water. And I saw how that gave me specific elements and perspectives to solving issues that affect sustainability from a policy and engineering standpoint. The other thing that I would want to highlight is that universities should turn their sights toward high-level policy advising and analysis. And this should reward such work by faculty and students. On any of our pressing challenges today, fighting COVID-19, ending extreme poverty, decarbonizing the earth system, protecting endangered species, government are typically out of their depth of expertise in the needed sciences, engineering and policy design. In short, they need our help. They need young people's help, and whether they know it or not. So universities have slightly specialized talent and highly motivated students ready to help design solutions, but often not organized for such efforts, or disapprove of such efforts as a distraction from academic research, or offer no institutional support for such efforts. And this might include faculty time, office space, legal and administrative support. And in my own experience, and in the programs that I've helped implement, this kind of practical policy work is not only hugely rewarding and with a high social benefit, but is itself the spur for deeper and more agile research activities as well. Fourth, I wish to recommend that universities seek out international partnerships to exemplify the work in sustainable development. As you already know, we face severe and urgent global challenges, and many of which require global cooperation to address, whether it is the control of the current pandemic, the transformation of the world's energy systems, or the redesign of agriculture and mining supply chains to encourage their environmental and social sustainability. All these require cooperation, and if universities get together to spur collaboration and co-creation, more can be done. And I think time has gone when somebody fell from heaven and solved our problems. And the time for lone rangers is already gone. We're in an era where collaboration, co-creation, and cooperation brings exponential results that we need more now than ever before. But what should students do? What should be the role of students? Students have got a critical role to play in advancing sustainability. You're in your prime age, you have the energy, you have the idealism, you have the dynamism, you have the skill set, you have the scholarship, and you have one unique element that no other age group has. You have the time in your hands. But how can you use that time productively? And I have a few recommendations that I wish to make. Number one, build a strong foundation. And this strong foundation should involve learning a multidisciplinary skill set. Collaborate with others, join student club, join association. Make sure that you have a very strong foundation that propels you to take up leadership. And this might also include engaging yourself in local politics, raising awareness of youth-related issues, and demanding change. But most importantly, think about other people. Think about other young people that are disproportionately eliminated from the discourse of SDGs. Think about young people that are racially marginalized. Think about young people that don't have the learning tools and skills in their universities. How can you be an active student who goes beyond the comfort zone and helps others? Recent research shows that if only 16% of high school students in high and middle income countries were to receive climate change education, they could see nearly 19 gigatons reduction of carbon dioxide by 2050. That's in 28 years from now. So when education helps students develop a strong personal connection to say climate change, as well as a sense of personal agency and empowerment, it can have consequential impact on students' daily behavior and decision-making that reduces their overall lifetime carbon footprint. So how do you, with the learning that you're receiving, go out there, extend beyond the boundaries of your learning institution, and go in the community where the problems are resurfacing and address those challenges head-on? I believe it's not enough to only learn. The only education happens when you learn and pass on what you are learning to the next generation. the only meaningful education happens when you acquire the skills and the scholarships and you decide to extend that into the community. And I believe a community is like a classroom. That's where you learn so much. That's where you learn ways of solving problems. And that's where you apply what you're learning. So I want to challenge you to go beyond the comfort zone. Think about the challenges that people are faced with. Think about how what you're learning can be applied to resolve those challenges. Collaborate with communities. Collaborate with people that you see are like-minded and doing similar things as your passion. Because the only way that we can be able to bring transformation is to stepping out of our comfort zone, stepping out of our universities, not doing business as usual, and doing groundbreaking work with communities, with the people, with the constituencies upon which we are entrusted to provide the support and leadership needed. You waste your youth if you don't use it productively to solve problems. And right now we are seeing a lot of work. We're seeing a lot of activism. We're seeing a lot of innovation. We're seeing young people creating floating schools. We're seeing young people creating organizations and think tanks and so much. And it's your responsibility as a young person to ensure that you take your learning from the classroom and apply to real world problems. And I believe that's what the 17 Sustainable Development Goals challenges us to do, to step out and collaborate and partner and go into the community and collaborate. And then teachers and professors in this case become mentors that guide students to implement solutions and scale them up. So I want to challenge you to think about how you can be an instrument of change, because the success of any intervention is dependent on the interior conditions of the intervener. And your interior conditions as an intervener, a student intervener, should be based on acquiring a multidisciplinary skill set, should be based on preparing yourself, having a stronger foundation, and stepping out to solve real world problems. So I encourage you to explore how you can become an active citizen, explore how you can utilize your learnings, explore how you can collaborate, explore how you can co-create, and explore how you can cooperate with others for us to bring about the transformation that we need the most. But most importantly, refuse to do business as usual. Refuse to settle for less. Set the bar high, and let's make sustainable development part of our daily lives. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your attention. We'll now transition to a panel on the Millennium Fellowship, moderated by Ramu Damodaran, who's the founder and former lead of the UN Academic Impact, who's going to help, and the tech team will help transition into the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brighton. I was very moved by your remarks, and I was just thinking to this time 11 years ago, the end of September 2010, when, at the request of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, we were putting together what became the United Nations Academic Impact. And when we created it, we were really thinking of a consortium, if you will, of universities, of researchers, of professors, and research, bringing together something to further the United Nations objectives. And in many ways, what we tried to do anticipated the Sustainable Development Goals 5 years later. What we did not realize was that at that very time, there was this movement called the Millennium Campus Network, which had just begun in Boston under the leadership of San Vaghar. And soon students came to us and said, why are you thinking of an academic impact just for teachers or researchers? What about students? And I was very moved, Brighton, by what you said about the one commodity students having as time. Because we did find that true, but we also realized that in many senses, that time had to be created, and students were adept in taking that time out of their schedules and investing it in a larger social purpose. I'm very grateful to the University Global Coalition and to UNITA, the UN Institute for Training and Research, for giving us this opportunity, for sharing with you the remarkable story of a partnership which began 3 years ago in 2018 between the Millennium Campus Network and the Millennium Fellowship Program and the United Nations Academic Impact. And we have the two leaders of the programs with us this morning, Sam Vaghar from the MCN and the Millennium Fellowship Program, and Koske Terai from the United Nations Academic Impact. So let me begin by asking Sam to share the history and his idea of the future of the Millennium Fellowship, and then move on to Koske. Sam?
Thank you, Ramu. UGC, hello. My name is Sam Vaghar, he, him. It is a massive honor to be with each of you today. In 2007, friends and I in our Brandeis University dorm rooms conceptualized the Millennium Campus Network, MCN. The idea was simple. Students united are more effective than students working alone. And 8 years ago, we launched the Millennium Fellowship. Just 15 students applied, but we centered those students, made sure they felt supported, validated, and connected. They started the Millennium Fellowship, a student movement for the SDGs. This year, more than 25,000 young leaders applied from over 2,200 campuses in 153 nations. There are over 200,000 hours dedicated to advance the SDGs in 30 nations this year. Students created this. Today, you will hear from Millennium Fellows on what this community means to them. Several UGC members already have Millennium Fellows on their campuses, and our hope is that you will invite your undergraduates to apply now for the class of 2022. I will never forget that lunch Ramu and I had nearly 5 years ago where we dreamed together. Ramu had the vision to launch a partnership between the United Nations Academic Impact and MCN on the Millennium Fellowship. This partnership has strengthened the fellowship and helps it reach undergraduates across the globe. My hope for this conference is that more connections just like this take shape. The reason I feel at home at UGC is that I know we are with the early adopters, the university presidents, professors, and staff that take student leadership seriously. Your work helps center students' ideas, introspection, and aspirations in their own learning. Imagine a higher education that matched your own bold commitments to student leadership. We at MCN are so proud to partner with the United Nations Academic Impact to help make this possible with undergraduates worldwide. To Koske, Terai, and the entire team at the United Nations Academic Impact, thank you for your trust and partnership over several years. Over to you, Koske, to share more.
Thank you, Sam, for your inspiration comments and the introduction. You have told us so much that I do not think I have anything more to say. But just to say a little few words, my name is Koske Terai, and it is truly an honor for me to speak at such an inspirational event. As a partner of the Millennium Campus Network for the Millennium Fellowship, please allow me to introduce to you a little about what United Nations Academic Impact does and about the Millennium Fellowship itself. So United Nations Academic Impact is an initiative based in New York headquarters of the United Nations under the Department of Global Communications Outreach Division. The initiative being established in 2010, our mission is to align the institutions of higher education, notably the universities, to the goals and mandates of United Nations, such as promoting peace, realizing gender equality, education, sustainable development goals, and more. So we are currently partnered with around 1,500 institutions around the world, and we like to consider ourselves as working as a bridge, if I may, between the universities and the United Nations, and also between the universities themselves. I'm sure many of you tuning in now, we have already had the privilege to work with. We thank you all for your efforts since then. So going back to the Millennium Fellowship, just as our dear moderator Ramu has introduced, our partnership with the Millennium Campus Network goes back to 2018, when Ramu was still the chief of the Academic Impact. We have partnered to present the Millennium Fellowship which has attracted, for this year's program, more than 25,000 applicants across 153 nations. Though the leadership of academic impact has changed since then, I'm happy to express here that MCN and UNI's partnership has only gotten stronger year by year. One such example is a series of articles we have recently launched together, featuring Millennium Fellow alumni from 2021, asking them about why they had decided to join the fellowship program in the first place and how their project has run since the establishment. I was surprised to see how much the articles were shared upon publication, especially on social media platforms such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. I always feel reassured that so many of the young students share the common passion toward the global goals, and I'm very confident that the partnership of MCN and UNI is functioning as a vacuum, attracting those with the greatest mind, talent, and passion from across the globe. That said, I would like to conclude my remarks here by expressing my sincere gratitude towards all the university leaders, faculty, researchers, and students who have worked so passionately with us to achieve our common goals, and by calling out to those institutions whom we have not had a chance to collaborate before, and to kindly consider joining our ever-expanding network. So thank you so much for your attention and time, and I hope the second day of this wonderful annual gathering bears as much fruit as it did in the previous year, or even more. Thank you, and over to you, Ramu.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kosuke. Thank you, Sam, for that very lucid and comprehensive introduction. I'm sure many of you wonder how actually the fellowship works in practice, the process of applying, and then what happens after you apply and you're selected. And I'd like to introduce another friend who's been a key partner from the MCN and the fellowship side, Noha Al-Khalqi, who will tell us something about that. Noha?
Thank you so much, Ramu, for inviting me here. And hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you all today. My name is Noha, and I serve as MCN's Programs Director. So in the few minutes I have with you today, I want to give you a quick overview of the Millennium Fellowship and share with you what fellows work on over the course of the semester. So the Millennium Fellowship at its core is a semester-long leadership development program for undergraduate students who are interested in or already working on advancing the United Sustainable Development Goals on their campus and communities. The fellowship is a cohort-based program where each selected campus typically has between 8 to 30 Millennium Fellows. It's free and it's open for undergraduates worldwide to apply. In fact, the class of 2022 application is already open for students around the world. Throughout the Millennium Fellowship, we've made it our mission to provide undergraduate students with the platform to learn about social impact and the various ways that they can advance the SDGs. So we do this by providing fellows with 3 core components, and that's trainings, which focuses on core values cultivation and honing hard and soft skills, connections with like-minded peers, both on campuses worldwide, as well as social impact leaders through webinar sessions and conversation hours, and thirdly, credentials. And that's where fellows receive certificate from MCN and the United Nations Academic Impact upon successful completion of the program. So the Millennium Fellows engage in this program between August and December of each year, and on every year, while they work on a social impact project that advances one or more of the SDGs. And this helps in creating an experiential learning opportunity throughout the semester and allows them to apply what they're learning in real time. Last year, we had 1,211 Millennium Fellows graduate from 80 campuses across 20 countries. And if I can share 3 metrics from our impact report this year for 2020, we had 98% who have agreed on values cultivation, that their understanding of empathy, humility, and inclusion has deepened as a result of the Millennium Fellowship. 95% agreed that the Millennium Fellowship provided them with skills that they would have not gained otherwise on their university, in their university campuses. And 96.7% of Millennium Fellows found the training sessions to be and content useful and helpful for their fellowship project. And there is much more impact that my colleagues would be sharing. You can learn more about it in impact at impact.millenniumfellows.org, and we'll be adding that in the chat box as well. But guided by the fellowship values of empathy, humility, and inclusion, fellows work on tackling really complex issues, things from addressing the impact of COVID-19 in local communities, addressing issues on climate change, and fighting racial inequalities. We just launched our class of 2021, which we're really excited about, just last month in August, with over 2,000 Millennium Fellows across 136 nations. And I want to share with you this short video that introduces the class of 2021 and allows you to meet some of our cohort from this year. And you will have a chance to hear from some of them as well in our session later today.
Hello to all of you. It's an absolute honor. It's a pleasure to be speaking to such great and passionate people. My name is Mariana Torquato, and I'm speaking to you from São Paulo, Brazil.
Hey everyone, my name is Jack Emanuel, and I'm a rising sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania, intending to study international relations and philosophy, politics, and economics, also known as PPE, with a concentration in globalization.
Hello everyone. I'm Fırıl Kai from Koç University in Istanbul, Turkey, and it's a great honor for me to be a part of the Millennium Fellowship class of 2021.
Our healthcare access and service is strongly affected by poverty, and in its place, poverty is strongly linked to race. So Black Brazilians, they usually have worse health outcomes, and they are subdued to practices that are led by prejudice, unfortunately. And in order to be able to tackle that, we have come up with the project Colors of Care. Our idea is to empower healthcare professionals to identify and act upon racial inequalities in healthcare.
I'm working as a research assistant in a project on my campus where we aim to develop a smartphone application that can measure a patient's hemoglobin levels from a photograph of their palm. We hope that this application will allow for the early diagnosis of thousands of anemia cases, especially in the rural areas of Turkey, where access to healthcare services is unfortunately limited. I believe that such digital health interventions are crucial to ensure equity in the provision of healthcare services in alignment with the United Nations SDG 3, as they lower the costs of diagnosis for people in poverty, make diagnosis more accessible to people in remote communities that are far away from hospitals and laboratories, and shift focus from treatment to prevention.
I am super excited to be a Millennium Fellow in the class of 2021 for this year and get started on my educational initiative known as Think Global, which will first teach West Philadelphia high school students global citizenship and other undertaught topics such as human rights, current world issues, and civic engagement methods to facilitate dialogue and discourse, amongst other things.
I'm so excited to be part of a community of like-minded students dedicated to social good, having role models that actually make a change in their communities for the better, and an environment where we can all learn from each other.
I'm privileged to welcome Amoaka-Agyei, Jasmine Amoaka-Agyei, who is with the Arizona State University, and Thiago Esslinger, who is with the Georgia Institute of Technology. And they're going to join us and share some of their thoughts about the fellowship. If I may begin with you, Jasmine, you've spoken about the linear economy model and how you feel that it's irrelevant to your generation and certainly to this planet. Could you tell us more about that in your work?
Yes. So for those who are unfamiliar, the linear economy model It's essentially the model we operate in today, where we take something from the environment, a raw material, we make it into a product, we use that product oftentimes just once, and then we throw it away, where it then pollutes the environment. So water bottles are my favorite example. They're so common, everyone has interacted with them before. And essentially, we want to make sure that we are preserving the natural resources that we currently have for generations to come so that they aren't without. And in order to do so, we need to shift towards what we call a circular economy, which is where we make a product, we use it, we reuse it, we remake it into something else, and then we recycle it. And essentially, we're transforming the way we think about waste, and we're creating a culture of valuing all of our natural resources through sustainability.
Thank you, and welcome, Regina. My apologies, I wasn't sure that you'd be able to join us, so I had to introduce you at the beginning. So good to see you here. Regina, could you tell us something about your project and your work in this regard?
Yes, thank you for inviting me. My name is Regina. I'm from Mexico, and I'm focused on SDG number 10, reducing inequality. We created Citizens of the World, which is a group that focuses on guiding young people's passions into actions towards helping refugees and migrants. We believe that everyone can do something to help refugees and migrants. So maybe you like dancing, cutting hair, or writing. Well, everything can help others, especially migrants and refugees. And currently we are collecting donations and activities for hundreds of people that come from Haiti, El Salvador, and other places in Central America that are migrating towards Mexico.
Thank you. Thiago, I read an interview with you and you had a very powerful phrase which I'd like you to elaborate upon. You said, the future can be saved. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So I think when we think about what is at stake with the future, a lot of, what happened maybe if we look at the current climate crisis that we are facing, a lot of it has to do with choices that we as a society have made in the past. And when we look at the future, especially in regards to climate models, because I know that is some of the work that I've touched on, at least at Georgia Tech, we see so many different models at which future projections show where we can go. Of course, there's the idealistic model of we can go and make a more sustainable society, one that is more habitable and livable for all of us. And then, of course, that you have this doomsday model. And when I think of the future being saved, I think it speaks to what exactly we can do today to make sure that in the future, and not only for our children and for our grandchildren, but at this point as well for the people who are living today, to make sure that there is a future to live in and that a lot of the resources that we have today don't get depleted within one generation or less. So then when I think of that future being saved, it's what we're doing in the present to get there.
There's a very powerful image when you talk about one's children and one's grandchildren, but also our own generation, which brings to mind the old phrase about the future is now. Jasmine, is that something that you felt in your work, that we are already in the future without realizing it?
Absolutely. I think each moment is incredibly valuable. There's a lot of urgency. Our generation has inherited a lot of complex challenges that require immediate action. And the only way to go about that is to educate others around us. We have to really communicate with our communities. We have to really create the sense of urgency among our parents, our grandparents, our siblings, and ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to really just talk about what's at stake so that they realize what can we value and what do we need to protect in order to really make the most of our future, our present. And yes.
I wonder in that context, and you've explained it so well, Jasmine, Regina, do you get the sense that however desperate their situation is, refugees still find time to think of the Earth's future rather than their immediate predicament? Is that something you've come across?
Yes, completely. I believe that everyone, despite the challenges they encounter, can still find time or like the necessity to think about a future that is possible and also creating it for the future generations. So definitely I have encountered that too.
And Thiago, going back to the point that Regina meant, do you see in your line of work that there is a geographical or political humanitarian separation on our planet between opportunities to realize this future and to save it?
Yes, completely. And I think that's when we have to consider environmental justice in the work that we do. Because while climate change may be happening and it is something that happens across our entire planet, the way it affects different communities is disproportionate, especially when considering some of the communities that may have the least impact to climate change who are then most affected by it. And I think that's when we have to consider how exactly are we making sure that we are reaching everybody, and that maybe individuals and groups that don't have the resources to act on climate, that those resources are made available to them and not just to a small few.
Thank you for that reference to resources being made available. And each one of you, each one of the three of you, has had, to my mind, an incredible resource, the Millennium Fellowship. And I'd like to ask each one of you, in very specific terms or anecdotal terms, how did it transform your life? May I begin with you, Jasmine?
I can't talk enough about this fellowship. Honestly, I tell everyone about it. It's been a phenomenal experience for me, because as someone who's always been very passionate about trying to make a difference and wanting to really understand what exactly is going on and how can I play a part in the solution, this really brought it all into context. And one of the biggest takeaways I had from this fellowship was that you may not actually have the solution, but you can amplify the people that do have the solution. You can be a part of the solution by using your resources and your network to really lift them up and make others aware of the work that they're doing. And for me, connecting with people across the globe that were really interested in the same things I was doing, that was so powerful, because they were the ones that taught me about myself, about what's important, about what to focus on. And then learning from the other leaders, it's just an incredible way to connect, to learn, and to grow as an individual.
What a stirring image, using a resource that you have as a resource for someone else and allowing them to optimize. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Regina?
Yes, well, the Millennium Fellowship definitely changed my life. It has helped me expand this project, connecting with other young leaders all over the world, and also acquiring new skills to make our projects better, bigger, and stronger. And in the same way, just as Jasmine said, we can also help others to make their projects better and stronger and go all over the world too. So definitely it has changed my life.
That again is an image about how it's not something only personal to oneself, but an agency for other people's change. Thank you, Regina. Thiago?
I would just like to highlight the other student leaders that you meet on your campus, and then even across campuses on various different, not even just countries, but continents. There's some connections that I have made that I don't know how else I would have met some of these individuals. I think also the leadership skills that you will learn apply beyond just one semester. And this actually was one of my first leadership experiences at my university. And I still recall some of the training sessions that our cohort worked through and the remarkable skills that they had taught me. And on that note of the training sessions, I think the thought-provoking questions that they push you to grow even further. And the one piece to that, I think, is looking at what exactly is the real impact of your project, and how can you make sure that it truly reaches the audience that you desire, and not just making a project that may not even have the impact that you want, or may have another impact that you didn't intend.
I'm very grateful for that image, Thiago, the idea, if I may, of a globalization of leadership, because we think of leaders as a select few. There are the leaders and the led. But I think, as you have explained it so eloquently, this is a fellowship that allows every fellow to become a leader in her or his own domain. Thank you so much for joining us, and allow me now to introduce our call for the 2022 fellowships and what that will entail by inviting Abigail, Canales, Ibarra, and James Odhiambo to join us. But thank you very much, each one of you.
Thank you so much, Ramu. And thank you, Thiago, Jasmine, and Regina for your incredible responses. There's not much more to be said. Just want to note on behalf of the team that Millennium Fellowship applications for the class of 2022 are officially open. I'd like to urge all young leaders present here, please apply and share this opportunity with your peers. Imagine joining a leadership model that asks you to look into your communities, figure out what problems people are facing in those communities, then create either alone or collaboratively a social impact project that directly addresses these problems, while still connecting you with like-minded peers across 136 campuses across the world. That is the powerful idea behind the fellowship. And the main point, in my opinion, is not necessarily to find great success with your project. It is to introduce or reinforce this idea in your mind that we have a part to play in improving local conditions, that by coming together, we can work to make a difference, no matter how big, no matter how small. I love, Ramu, that you noted, we've heard for many years that the future belongs to us, but really, when is that? The future is now, and it's important that we join spaces that open our eyes to this reality, that we are here in the future, we are living in it, and we are actively creating it. And it is our responsibility to do what we can with what we have to improve the present. So thank you so much, and all respect to university leaders present, but no class will teach you this. So if you want to apply, please go to millenniumfellows.org/apply and complete your round 1 application. This only takes a few minutes, and the point of this session is to learn a bit more about who you are, where you're from, your level of study, and most importantly, what causes you care about. And then applications are reviewed on a rolling basis, and if you qualify, you're invited for round 2, where you speak about the local challenges you're facing and how you plan to address them, and the SDGs will be advancing. So at this point, I'll invite Dr. Abigail Canales to wrap up our session, but I want to once again say thank you, Ramu, and thank you to the incredible panel.
Thank you, Ramu, and thank you, James. I just wanted to add, if you want to be the part of the generation of social impact leaders, we invite you as an undergraduate to rethink the paradigms and perpetuate inequality, promoting a human-centric and collaborative approach and transform dialogue into action. Now the Millennium Fellowship class of 2022 application is open. The program will take place on selected campuses worldwide from August to December 2022. Applications will be reviewed on a rolling basis, and eligible students will proceed to the second and final round of the application. Please enter to millenniumfellows.org and click on Apply. We envision a future of sustainability and peace, one where every young individual has the opportunity to realize their leadership potential. In this way, we will touch and impact the lives of communities all over the world. And now I leave the stage to Ramu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abigail. Thank you, James. Those are two very powerful takeaways. James, as you said, no class, no professor will teach you this. And Abigail, your idea of human-centric brings us right back to the Charter of the United Nations, and I think its most powerful and eloquent phrase, the dignity and worth of the human person. We are in a month where United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres launched our common agenda. And one of its key elements is the idea of safeguarding future generations. He's talked about repurposing the United Nations Trusteeship Council into a steward for future generations, about appointing a special envoy for future generations. And I think what we've seen today is an indicator of just how vast that potential is. The United Nations is always full of acronyms. We are now meeting with the UGC, the University Global Coalition. Looking back on the last half an hour or so, I realized that UGC would also stand for Unleashing Grassroots Change. That is what each of the Millennium Fellows has done, working in her or his community at the grassroots and making change which can then be adapted at the global level. We often hear about the phrase about thinking global and acting local, but you, the Millennium Fellows, have reversed or transformed that into thinking locally and acting globally, because your actions, whether on climate change or the other sustainable development goals at the grassroots of your community, allow the United Nations to take your ideas and enact them globally. So thank you for all that you've done. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Costa, our friends in the Millennium Campus Network, Noha, and the United Nations Academic Impact. And I hope that at least some of you who are watching or tuned in will have the ability to apply for and be selected for a future Millennium Fellowship and join this great movement of minds and hearts. Thank you.